Some people have that one. Another belief barrier is helpless. They'll say a little bit differently. They'll say, well, other people can heal. Other people can get over cancer, but I can't. Can't do it. I'm helpless. There's something, a deficit within me. Other people can heal it. I can't heal it. That belief barrier prevents them from exploration, prevents them from change. So then we go to the next one, which is worthless. Person says, well, actually, other people do heal from cancer, or other people do heal from grief, and I can heal. I could do it too, but I don't deserve to do it. And this is very common. Worthlessness. I don't deserve it. And what we need to do is change the beliefs about helpless and hopeless and worthless, which we do in the destination method. Codependence is a very common factor that weakens the immune system. Codependence, the person has a confusion of an identity. They say, I don't know where I end and the other person begins. That person over there is suffering and I can't be present while that person's suffering. I'm locked into their identity. And so releasing themselves from emotional enmeshment is of profound importance. We do that in the destination method. Self-criticism as negative self-talk, powerful stressor, negative internal voice, my own voice or somebody else's voice in my mind saying terrible things. Oh, you're stupid, you're bad, you'll never make it. Those kinds of internal negative, you ever have an inner critic? You ever have a negative inner critic that's in there carping? Well, that can be changed in a matter of minutes. We can change that. The thing I'm hoping that you get an idea about this, it doesn't take forever. There is an end to psychotherapy. There is an end to the coaching. There is an end to it. You just simply have to know, what is the mind made of? If you don't know what the mind is made of, you won't be able to change it. If the people you see don't know what the mind is made of, they won't be able to change it. But if you understand that your mind is made of pictures and sounds, then you'll know that a negative internal voice is simply a negative internal voice, which then is characterized as depression or characterized as anxiety. It's given a label. But if we change the voice, that will be gone, and it'll be gone now. So it's very important to understand that. Also, unforgiveness is anger and hatred and bitterness. Unforgiveness is profoundly powerful, negative stressor on the emotional life and the bodily life. So a person walks around with hatred and anger and bitterness. I got to tell you about my grandmother. She taught me how not to die. I went to my grandmother's deathbed. She was dying, and sat down next to her. And my grandmother was very quiet. She hardly spoke. But when I got to the deathbed, she was lying there, and she was in a kind of a reverie. And she was in this hallucination. She'd come in and she'd come out. And I said, hi, Grandma. And she started speaking to me, and she was cursing. She was so cursing. Everything was a curse word. And I never heard her curse in my whole life. I said, Grandma, hey, what's going on? And she opened her eyes and looked at me. She said, oh, no, not you. And I said, oh. Now, my grandmother died in anger and bitterness and hatred for things that had been done to her 75 years prior to her death. I want you to understand the power of unforgiveness, the power of unresolved, unrelieved bitterness and anger, hatred. She died that way. And she died that way because no one knew, and I didn't know in those days, how to sit down and resolve the conflict that's going on inside. To resolve that I want to forgive, I don't want to forgive. I absolutely have no intention of ever forgiving. Why would I do that? That'd be crazy. I'd open myself up to the same pain again. But on the other hand, I really need to forgive because, believe it or not, the royal road to peace of mind is forgiveness. There is no peace without forgiveness. Peace is the foundation. Rather, forgiveness is the foundation of peace of mind. Just like gratitude is the foundation of joy. Dr. Keneally talked about joy. Joy comes immediately as soon as you become grateful. It doesn't matter what your physical condition is. It doesn't matter what your situation is. If you can find it in your heart to change to gratitude, joy will emerge. What we do in the destination method is we help people change their thinking so that they can immediately experience peace of mind and joy. And guilt and shame are very powerful stressors. Person feeling guilty. Guilt is when a person breaks their own rules, you know, like I have a rule about telling the truth all the time, and then I didn't say quite the truth, and then I feel guilty about it, and I break my rule. I must go apologize and turn that around. So I turn it around, I feel better. That's guilt comes from breaking one's own rules. Shame comes from breaking social rules, somebody else's rules. And so if shame happens, I need to find out, okay, how can I make amends? Or maybe change my standards. So guilt and shame, when they're unrelieved, when they go on, produce this chronic stress, weakening the immune system, and also anxiety and depression. Anxiety is always about the future. It's a thought. Anxiety is never about the past. You know that. It's never about the past. It's always about what will happen if, what's going on in the future. And all we need to do is change the what-if question, and the anxiety will evaporate. The same thing with depression. Depression is a result generally from a negative internal dialogue. We can transform that as well. I want to put this together in one structure so you get an idea about this. This is called the 7 levels of the creative order. It's something, when I was getting my doctorate in divinity, I did a great study on what it was that people were doing for deepest possible transformation. If you can notice this for a moment, at the bottom it says results. Okay, results. Well, what kind of results are there? Well, I take this little device and I throw it in the air a little bit, and the result is that you see it. Well, I wanted to do that. I said, I want to teach. I want to teach, and so I'm thinking this is the best way to teach, is to throw this little device in the air. Well, that comes from an action. The action precedes the result. And it could be an emotion, but right now I'm talking about action. What comes before the action? The thought. I said to myself, this is what I want to do. So talking to myself, the thought precedes the action. Before the thought, what controls thoughts are your beliefs. Your beliefs control your thinking. So if you believe that you're stupid in mathematics, you will never think to go get a book on math. I think I'll go to the library and read a couple of books on math. If you believe that you're really stupid about this or that, and that it's impossible for you to learn it, if you're convinced of that, then you won't think to do something that will change it. So if you believe that it's hopeless, there's no point in transforming your emotional life. If you believe, my emotional life has got nothing to do with my cancer, it's got nothing to do with my illness, what's that got to do with anything? There can't be a conflict. If you're convinced of that, then you won't think, gee, I think I'll try that out. And you won't take action, learn it, and you won't notice the results. Your beliefs control your thoughts. What you believe determines what you are capable of thinking. So it's very high-level change work when we do belief change work. So when we work at beliefs, it has to do with helpless and hopeless and worthless. But if we work at the level of thoughts, it has to do with what people see in their mind's eye and hear in their mind's ear. It has to do with, well, if the person's saying negative things to themselves, we change that thought, which will change the emotion. If the person's anxious, it's because at the level of thought, they're talking to themselves and creating anxiety, or they're seeing something in their mind's eye and it's creating anxiety. Well, once we change that, the emotion will change. It changes in the twinkling of an eye. When you moved the image of the person you liked over the image of the person you disliked, or the other way around, you have an emotional reaction because your mind creates your emotions. It's crystal clear. Your mind creates your emotions. All you have to do is understand what your emotions are, you're created by, which is your thought, and then change your thinking. A higher level is beliefs. Beyond that is your identity, which is, who do you think you are? If you know what you feel and what you want and what you think, you have an idea of what you are. Your psychological identity, not your spiritual identity, your psychological identity changes all the time because it's determined by what you feel, want, and think. So when you meet somebody and you want to tell them all about yourself because you are falling in love with them, you reveal what you feel, what you want, and what you think. And when you don't want somebody to know you, you lie to them. And when you lie to them, you tell them what you don't feel, and you don't want, and you don't think. It's not true, and then they can't find you. Because if they can find you, they can hurt your feelings. If they know what you feel, want, and think, they have access to you. So when people lie, it's because they want to make sure that people don't have access to them. And they cheat themselves out of the possibility of love. Because love only happens with transparency and honesty. So you go, oh, identity level's really powerful. Now, in the world of psychology, results, actions, emotions, thoughts, beliefs, and identity are not really regarded as something outside of psychology. You go, yeah, we kind of look at those from time to time. That's right. But they don't look at soul and they don't look at spirits because they go, no, that's not going to be studied here. It's too fuzzy for them. The rest of it, they go, yeah, we can work with this, particularly actions, because actions you can videotape, right? Emotions you can't. You can't find thoughts, by the way, inside of anybody's brain. I just want to make it plain here. If you cut up in my brain and you look for the love that I have for my wife, you won't find it there. you will find synapses and you'll find electrical impulses and you'll find all kinds of stuff going on in the brain, but you won't find any thoughts there because thoughts are not physical. There's something you and I know. We know it so well, we live in it. We live in our thought world, but that's not living in the brain. You actually are much more than your brain. In my view, in the destination method, it is the mind that creates the body rather than the body that creates the mind. So then we get up at the soul level and the spirit level, then we're talking about, at the soul level, instead of psychology, we're talking about the queen of sciences, which is theology. In theology, they'll talk about the soul and its relationship to God. At the level of spirit, we transcend theology and we go into mysticism to find out that the infinite is all there is. The infinite says, there is no place where God is not. You say, well, how could that be? Every religion in the world defines God as infinite. There's not one of them that doesn't. Well, infinite means anywhere you point, you must be pointing at that which you call God because there's no limit. And this becomes fuzzy to most people. So a lot of people don't want to deal at the level of soul and spirit. But in the destination method, it's designed to work there if people want that. If they want changes spiritually, they want to heal their issues that have to do with, many people are very angry with God, for example. They want to resolve that, we can do that. Otherwise, we stay at the levels of results and actions, emotions, thoughts, and so on and so forth. I just have a couple of moments here. I want to tell you about, I told you about the woman who was 83 years old, had the shock for 25 years. I wanted you to know about post-traumatic stress disorder. For a long time, I've been hearing people say, post-traumatic stress disorder, there's nothing much you can do about it. For the last 30 years, I've been helping people resolve post-traumatic stress disorder. It really is resolvable. We can do it. I worked with a gentleman a while back now, wonderful man. He was in Vietnam in 1970, just after I was in the military, in the Army from 1966 to 1969, during the height of the Vietnam War. I didn't go into Vietnam, but I had been in the military at the time. So this gentleman trusted me. And he had gone to Vietnam and had his legs blown off there. And he came back. 38 years later, he came to one of our courses. We have Healing the Wounded Heart course, where he wanted to learn everything that we do, because we have no secrets. We teach everybody how to do it. And he came and he sat down and he said, he came in a wheelchair. He had no legs. And he said he really wanted to know how to resolve the 38 years worth of suffering. I sat with him and I said, is it all right if we videotape this? Because I knew what would happen. Turned on the video machine. We resolved his trauma in the time of the 2 hours that was designed to teach people how to do post-traumatic stress disorder resolution. We did that. He then was stunned because every night when he went to bed, he had to take 4 different pain medications in order to sleep because he had what was called phantom pain. He had no legs, but he had the pain in his legs anyway. And he had to take these. Well, after we did the post-traumatic stress disorder, resolved that, I then took him through a phantom pain resolution, and he no longer had to take the medication ever. He slept fine. He found out all the positive reasons. I got to harp on this part. He found out the positive reasons why he had the post-traumatic stress disorder. He found out the positive reasons why he had the experience of phantom limb pain. And by finding these things and loving himself and then making the changes, he resolved it. It was all done. A wonderful man. Also, I want to mention that there's many ways to address these kinds of issues. There's sit down and talk to somebody. I went into one of our friends, one of our students in Louisiana. We went to Louisiana and found out that one of our students had been in the hospital for 30 days. She had had a massive stroke. And she was in the ICU, 30 days, unconscious. I went and I sat down and talked to her. And I spoke directly to her unconscious mind, which is the pictures and the sounds and the feelings and tastes and smells that are out of her awareness. I held her hand and I spoke to her and reminded her of this secret. Your body knows exactly how to heal itself. It knows how. We just need to get out of the way. She heard my voice. In a few minutes, she opened her eyes. She said, I love you to the people around her. She then said, I got to sleep. She went back to sleep. 1 month later, we went back in November, she took Lizette, my wife, and I out to lunch. She had been in ICU unconscious for 30 days. Now, you can call her on the telephone and ask her how that happened. But what had happened is we connected very deeply for the resolution of the unnecessary suffering. You see, there is necessary suffering, which is suffering that we can't change. that we don't know anything about it. We don't have a technology for it, and we don't know the gift. But there's all this other stuff, which is unnecessary suffering, which is we know how to solve it, and the person found the gift. And we have this kind, there's so much more I'd like to tell you stories, but I can't tell you all the stories. There's a summary up there on the board of what we've covered. I think probably we're getting near to the end of this, but the destination method and the creative order link the body, emotions, mind, and spirit, and the health results we experience come from our actions, of course, and our emotions, our thoughts, our beliefs, our identity, and spiritual levels. And stress is due to a perceived or mentally represented experience. What we want to do is change that. And we do that with the Healing Yes, Healing No process as our first intervention when we work with somebody who really wants to heal. I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope it was of interest. Bye-bye.